definitely concerned about him. His coworkers, they didn't know where he was.
The disappearance of a physician assistant turns deadly.
There appeared to be a human limb laying on the floor.
Inside the vehicle, we found rope, we found tape, we found a box cutter.
Did he already have a criminal history?
He did not, and he was a respected physician's assistant.
A toxic relationship leads to a twisted crime.
What do you think really happened in that apartment?
Investigators were a little bit stumped.
You could see just from his movements and his eyes that the realization had just struck that his life was essentially over.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Expose brings us to Hilton Head, South Carolina, a little more than 30 miles northeast of Savannah. The island is best known for its beaches and natural beauty, making it a year-round vacation resort. But that peaceful, fun-loving atmosphere was darkened by a cloud of fear following a disturbing murder in an apartment complex. As police began their investigation, they struggled to piece together the evidence. In fact, even identifying the victim's cause of death would prove a difficult task.
It was right before Labor Day weekend when 53-year-old physician's assistant Nick Evangelista emailed his colleagues at the medical clinic where he worked.
He had asked coworkers to reschedule his clinics at the end of the week, and he indicated he would be back in the office after the holiday.
Nick wrote that he was flying to Minneapolis to see his mother, who just had a stroke and was in a hospital intensive care unit. He said he would keep them posted, but he never contacted them again.
Once text messages went unanswered and he did not show back up to the office, coworkers thought there was probably something wrong.
Nick was personable, punctual, and fit. He rode his bike 13 miles to work every day.
He was very well liked by his colleagues and the people in his office. He was known to be a professional at work, very normal guy in his mid-50s.
When calls to Nick went unanswered, colleagues called security where he lived and asked them to conduct a wellness check.
They were not able to locate him in the system, and so they weren't really any help for a health and welfare check at that time.
A few days later, movers tried calling Nick at work.
Nick had actually scheduled movers to come to the condo. The movers went to the unit, knocked on the door, heard a dog barking, but were not able to get anyone to come to the door.
Security officers checked the unit. They looked through a window to the left of the front door. The blinds were slightly open at the bottom.
There appeared to be a human limb laying on the floor that they were able to see through the blinds of the unit.
Security called the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, who forced entry into the unit. Investigators immediately noticed Nick's bike in the dining room, and there appeared to be food thrown against the wall. Broken glass and plastic were on the floor. Signs of packing were everywhere, but there was also evidence of a terrible struggle. The master bedroom was in a state of disarray. And then, as officers made their way to the guest bedroom, they came upon a terrifying sight.
A white female was found deceased, naked, face up in a spare bedroom, and she was surrounded by moving supplies and boxes.
It appeared she had been there for several days.
She was decomposing, and there were pieces of green bubble wrap surrounding her body.
The victim was identified as the woman whose name appeared on the lease, Rebecca Melton, known as simply Becca. She and Evangelista were roommates, but had also been romantically linked together.
She lived at that residence. She had a couple cars that were in her name, and there was a BMW that was hers, and also a Jeep Wrangler that should have been parked out front but was not present.
Melton's cell phone also appeared to be missing, but little else of value was gone.
Did not seem to be anything of value that had been taken. And again, there was no forced entry. There was a bloody bandage that was found and some items of value such as a laptop computer.
Rebecca's purse was still there, as was her identification, but it was difficult to determine what exactly had caused her death.
Investigators were a little bit stumped. When law enforcement found Rebecca, she didn't have any real outward signs of injury, so it is possible that, she could have died from natural circumstances.
Investigators learned Rebecca had experienced her share of setbacks.
She had recently lost her mother, and that had really taken a toll on her. She had been very depressed, and so even suicide could have been a possibility as far as investigators were concerned. A sexual assault was certainly something that was out there, particularly when you find a female naked and deceased.
The evidence seemed to indicate she had been involved in a struggle, and many household items were collected for DNA testing.
They had a hunch that perhaps the bubble wrap laying next to her had been used because it had kind of been stretched out. So they did collect that for DNA testing.
The one person who could help investigators determine what had happened to Melton was nowhere to be found.
So were investigators concerned about Nick Evangelista's well-being?
People were definitely concerned about him. His coworkers, they didn't know where he was. This was not in his character to disappear or not show up for work. So it was quite surprising to everyone that knew him.
Friends of Nick Evangelista were stunned when a check for the 53-year-old physician's assistant turned into a possible murder investigation for his roommate and love interest of 2 years, Rebecca Melton. The medical examiner's findings made locating Evangelista even more pressing.
Her death was from suffocation. It was definitely from a soft surface because it didn't leave any marks.
Rebecca Melton's death officially became a homicide investigation. A toxicology report also identified the presence of amphetamines in her system. In fact, investigators found records of various prescriptions issued by Nick Evangelista.
As a physician's assistant, he actually prescribed Rebecca some medication.
But there was no record of Rebecca being Evangelista's patient. Even more alarming was the fact that he kept no record of the narcotics he was giving her, a felony crime in South Carolina. An all-points bulletin was issued for Nick Evangelista.
He was listed as a person of interest in the death of Rebecca Melton.
Did he already have a criminal history?
He did not, and he was a respected physician's assistant. None of his colleagues ever saw this coming.
While investigators waited for any news about Evangelista, they spoke to friends who knew the couple.
They had a history of breaking up and getting back together. They certainly did. And I believe at this time, they were more on the outs.
The more investigators learned about Melton, the more apparent it became she had been living in pain, both physical and emotional.
Both she and Nick were a little bit isolated from their families. But Becca was not in a very great emotional state during this time.
She worked for an airline company, and then she had a slip-fall injury. So her career was taken from her, and she was in constant pain.
For 5 weeks, the investigation was at a standstill until Melton's Jeep was spotted 500 miles away in Pensacola, Florida.
So when you arrive onto Pensacola Beach, we take a picture of every single tag that enters onto the beach. And because the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office had entered that tag attached to a warrant, as soon as the vehicle crossed over into Pensacola Beach, a notification was sent to the U.S. Marshal Service. The U.S. Marshal Service then contacted us locally, and we had officers patrolling that area, and then they located the vehicle.
Deputies knew whom the Jeep belonged to and who might be behind the wheel.
What's your name?
My name's Nick, evangelist. Yes, sir.
No one could have imagined what happened next. Nick Evangelista had been missing for 5 weeks when investigators in Pensacola, Florida, traced Rebecca Melton's missing Jeep.
Local law enforcement were able to locate the Jeep and do a traffic stop.
Evangelista was handcuffed and seated in the back of a cruiser when he began talking to the officer.
Did you say you've been sleeping in your car?
Last 2 nights I ran out of money. Obviously my bank accounts are frozen. My job, I just left, told them the story, so they stopped paying me. I had a good job and a good life when I met the wrong person. Sir, we just had horrible problems. Horrible.
What kind of problem?
I mean, she started hitting me.
When officers asked him about the Jeep, he didn't hold back.
That's her vehicle. It was bought and paid for in her name. We drove
so she
it.
reported it stolen.
Oh, she's dead, sir. I'm sure of it. I'm sure.
Of course, that was a shock to the officer's ears that someone would just freely mention that. So I was contacted as the on-call homicide investigator, and I requested that he be brought to the sheriff's office so we could put him in a controlled interview room.
When did she pass?
I'm pretty sure it was the night I left.
What night was that?
September 26th, Tuesday, 5 weeks ago yesterday. We drank, we both drank. I had my trouble. We were together nearly 2 years. And when she drank, she got ugly and violent and crazy.
Evangelista described what had unfolded in the apartment he shared with Melton in graphic detail.
They initially had a nice dinner. They retreated into the bedroom. They had sexual relations that night, and then an argument ensued. Mr. Evangelista stated that as the argument became heated, he left the bedroom and she followed him. He said he went to the spare bedroom to get away from her, and she followed, and she was of course naked at this time because they had just left the bedroom. He said that in a fit of rage he blacked out, and when he woke up he was straddling her body with his knees on her upper arms.
So did he openly admit to smothering her with bubble wrap?
He was trying to explain that he was a victim of being battered, being verbally and physically abused by his live-in partner, Rebecca, and that it got to such a point to where he finally just snapped.
I was holding her down and I blacked out when, I know at one point I think I was holding bubble wrap over her mouth, and I blacked out, and when I came to, I don't think she was breathing.
The investigators in South Carolina had a hard time believing Evangelista's portrayal of Rebecca as the aggressor.
He, again, painted himself more as the victim in this case, and that, he snapped after, 2 years of this abusive relationship, which is just extremely unlikely. She was about 125 pounds, 5'4", and of course, when she was found, she was naked.
Evangelista said he had tried ending his life numerous times.
He had come to Pensacola Beach and intentionally was going to hang himself. However, he couldn't go through with it because every time he set up to hang himself in one of our public bathrooms, people kept entering into the bathroom and disturbing his attempted suicide.
That didn't make much sense considering, he had packed this bag to include a bathing suit for his trip to Pensacola.
Evangelista had shut down his own phone, but a prepaid one he had purchased after the murder contained incriminating evidence.
His cell phone revealed that just days after he murdered Becca, he was searching for prostitutes and drugs.
Did he seem remorseful to you?
He leaves his dead girlfriend rotting in their condo and goes down to Pensacola seeking the company of escorts, texting them, telling him that they'll find him at the hotel bar. He'll be the best looking one around. He was not remorseful at all. He was not thinking of Becca or her family.
Through extensive research, Swanson learned just how toxic Melton's living arrangements had become.
As a physician's assistant, he actually prescribed Rebecca some medication. So that's also a way that we thought maybe he was keeping her under his thumb.
Police say while their relationship was clearly toxic, only one of them chose murder. Evangelista's trial opened 3 years after Rebecca's homicide.
Assistant Solicitor Hunter Swanson had never tried a murder case in which bubble wrap was used to murder the victim.
The cross-examination of Nick was one of the more entertaining cross-examinations I've been able to do, because there were so many holes that you could poke in his story by his actions and through the information that we learned from his journal, from his ex-wife even. But she had once accused him of domestic violence as well. His defense really fell flat at the end of the day.
Evangelista's defense team portrayed him as a victim of abuse.
The way he projected himself in court was of that of a battered spouse syndrome, that he was a battered husband or a battered boyfriend, and that she was the instigator, she was the agitator, and she was the person that hurt him.
What do you think really happened in that apartment?
I think he is a sociopath and a narcissist. I think that Becca was just someone that he couldn't shake. So it was like someone he couldn't live with and someone he couldn't live without. And he decided that the only way for him to be able to completely cut her off and get her out of his life was to kill her.
The case remains an unforgettable one for Swanson.
The fact that she was in her most defenseless state, naked, and he had to hold that bubble wrap over her mouth for 3 to 4 minutes before she would die. That's a long, long time. That's a long time to make another decision and to just let go.
After a 3-day trial, Nick Evangelista was found guilty of murdering Rebecca Melton and sentenced to 45 years in prison. He appealed his case 3 years later, but it was denied. And now it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. A troubling reality is that many homicides are committed by individuals known to the victim. Tragically, this was the case in the murder of Rebecca Melton, who was killed by her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Nick Evangelista. Recognizing the warning signs of an abusive relationship is crucial for your safety. Paying attention to the following warning signs will help keep you safe. A partner who abuses drugs or alcohol, breaks things during disagreements, displays excessive jealousy and possessiveness, or attempts to isolate you from family or friends are oftentimes precursors to violence and should not be ignored. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For everyone here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.